Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
Now entering the game for Philly Press Box Radio, Bill Furman and Jim Chet Chesko.
It's Wednesday, September 27th, 2023. Welcome to the Philly Press Box Radio Roundtable, brought to you by the Irish Rover Station House in Langhorne, PA, Allstate Insurance in Westchester, PA, Cavs, Philly Tailgates, and the Edge of Philly Sports Network. I'm Bill Furman. I'll be your host tonight, along with my partner, Jim Chet Chesko. And hey, Chet, the Phillies clinched the top wild card spot. Woo! The Eagles rolled through Tampa Bay with a nice Monday Night Football win. Penn State spanked Iowa in Saturday night's whiteout in Happy Valley. It's week 4 of our fearless NFL East predictions as well. As always, there is plenty to talk about at Philly Sports.
But, Bill, you didn't mention Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. We were going to do a 10-minute segment on them, remember?
Well, everybody else talked about them. There was no reason for me to add anything more to that mess.
But you're right. Great time in Philly sports, so we will focus on all of that stuff for sure.
We have our own Kelce Swift. We don't need those two. We got our own, and they're doing pretty good too.
That is right.
Hey, we have a couple great guests tonight. The host of Commanders Gridiron podcast, Steve Laughman, talking about the upcoming Commanders Eagles game, and the sports editor of Philly Voice, Evan Macy, making a return visit to Philly Press Box Radio.
We talked with Evan for the first time just about 1 year ago, so we look forward to having him back with us. And Steve is a first-timer. We love having a first-time guest. That's always fun.
Absolutely. Well, hey, let's talk Eagles. The Birds rolled through Tampa, as I mentioned, Monday night. They now face division rival Washington on a short week.
About time they're back to playing on a Sunday, a relatively normal weekend for a change. The Birds, of course, looking to stay unbeaten. The Commanders trying to rebound from that not-so-pretty loss to the Bills in Week 3.
Absolutely. So, hey, let's get to it. Let's get some insight on what's going on down in D.C. with the host of the Commanders Gridiron podcast, Steve Laughman. Joining us, Steve. Welcome to Philly Press Box Radio, first-timer.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you, gentlemen, for the invite.
Steve, great to meet you. Let me ask you right off the bat. The Commanders opened the season with 1-score victories over both the Cardinals and the Broncos, but then they kind of got smoked at home against a pretty good Buffalo Bills team this past Sunday. What is the mood of the team and the fan base down in the D.C. area this week?
So you ask a really good question, Chet, that, unfortunately with the myriad of decades of poor football play in the DC market, fans are quick to jump on anything negative in as simple as 1 week. We have a super young quarterback who's basically in his rookie season, even though it is technically his second year, in Sam Howell. But he's only got 4 starts under his belt. So, as a result of last week's thrashing to the Buffalo Bills, a lot of fans and even media, are already questioning, is Sam Howell the guy? Is he going to be the long-term quarterback? How's the meshing with EB, the offensive coordinator, working or not working already? So it really boils down to, our fan base and even some of the local media in DC doesn't understand the patience that a young quarterback and a brand new offensive coordinator bring to a team who's been, let's be honest, perennially bad in the NFC East for so many years.
Well, Steve, if it makes you feel better, the same thing is going on in Philly with Jalen Hurts and the new offensive coordinator. There was all these posts during the Monday night game when that game wasn't really in question. I never thought for the Eagles. And there's all Hurts is the problem. Hurts is the problem. Like, really? Are you kidding me? But yeah, so we're kind of used to that, that's for sure. But hey, speaking of that Buffalo game, Steve, I got to come out and confess, because it's going to come up later when I get gigged about it. I actually took Washington because I thought they would play really well against Buffalo, and they just stunk it up.
Yeah, unfortunately, I kind of thought I was really hoping that Washington would pull out the victory. However, on paper, Buffalo's stacked, and on an annual basis, they're picked to be one of the top AFC teams to contend for the Super Bowl every year. And unfortunately, we didn't put our best foot forward on Sunday, and the Buffalo Bills kind of did the opposite and put their best foot forward, which resulted in basically a super lopsided victory for Buffalo. And as we discussed off camera earlier, when your team gives up 6 turnovers, 4 of which are interceptions by your young, inexperienced quarterback, that ultimately spells disaster for your team, regardless of how well your defense plays or how many drives you can put together on offense.
Hey, I want to get back to Sam Howell. We were talking about him a bit. You mentioned the interceptions. He's been sacked now 19 times in 3 games, 9 of them by the Bills. What is the outlook for him? I mean, are they looking at him as being the guy long-term, or is he just kind of a place filler?
So you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, we hold that dubious distinction going into week 4, leading the NFL, giving up 19 sacks, which is actually 30% more than the next leading team, if you want to carry that title. And I think that between the fan base and especially the coaches and management, he is the guy. And right now, there's not really a second option, even though we have Jacoby Brissett as a backup quarterback. Sam Howell is displaying some of the qualities that show that he can be that guy. He's got the arm. He can definitely sling the ball down the field. Unfortunately, one of the things that came out a lot in this most recent game against Buffalo was, unfortunately, he held on to the ball too long. He was trying to hold on to the ball longer than 3, 4, 5 seconds, resulting in sacks. Now, on the flip side of that, the offensive line certainly did not help his cause at all. However, some of those sacks were on Sam Howell for holding that ball on too long. And it's one of the things that he addressed in his press conference yesterday after practice was, hey, look, one of the things I need to do better this week, especially against Philadelphia and that stout defense, is get rid of the ball faster and make my reads a lot quicker than what I did against Buffalo.
So if you're the Commanders and you're game planning for this Eagles team that is incredibly good up on that defensive front, and you're leading the league in sacks, it's got to be a real challenge for the Commanders to be putting together a solid game plan to move the ball. And we saw where Tampa certainly struggled to do that as well.
Absolutely. And one of the things that helps Washington, though, kind of take some confidence out of the Buffalo game is they did have 5 to 6 really good sustained drives in the 70 to 80 yard range where they went downfield and they moved the ball against Buffalo. But ultimately it was poor decisions by Sam Howell trying to force throws, 2 turnovers in the end zone, the fumble by Antonio Gibson. They were all drive killers that basically resulted in no points for the Commanders. But one of the things, going up against basically the best team, arguably in the NFC right now, and even for the season in Philadelphia, is, what are we going to do against that amazing defense that you guys have? Between your front 7 and typically your front 4, as well as that good secondary, I would like to think that our offensive line is going to be a shred better than what they were against Buffalo. Unfortunately, if they are the same or even just marginally better than what we did against Buffalo, it's going to be a long afternoon for Washington.
I'm going to put the over-under at 6.5 sacks for the Eagles defense.
Wow.
I'm seeing a lot of sacks. Hassan Reddick's going to get going this weekend. Hey, I want to switch gears just a little bit, though, and talk about the fact that the Commanders got a new owner this year, a guy that Philadelphia fans are pretty familiar with because, he owns the 76ers. Well, the Sixers fans don't really love this guy, and now he's down in Washington talking about Josh Harris, Mr. Personality. I guess after Daniel Snyder, fans of the football team are embracing him somewhat. Am I right?
Oh, exactly. Josh Harris has been, to the majority, probably like 99% of the fan base and local media, the amazing breath of fresh air after 24 years of subpar mediocrity from Dan Snyder, who basically ran the entire franchise into the ground. And one of the things that is being looked at from like a fan perspective is what exactly are we going to get out of Josh Harris? From, with Dan Snyder, we had one owner, primary owner. That's the only franchise he owned. And, as we know, Josh Harris has his ownership fingers into many ventures between basketball and football and hockey and NASCAR and so many things. And a lot of the questions have already been raised in the offseason is how much time is Josh Harris actually going to dedicate to the football franchise that is so desperately needed from its owner. And so far, he's been doing everything and saying everything that needs to be done. And the fan base is just can't get enough of that on so many levels. And hopefully it continues. However, as a, season ticket holder and an avid fan of the Commanders, one of the things that I also look at, and I looked at it in one of my first shows on the Commanders Gridiron, was the track record of Josh Harris being an owner and bringing championships to his teams, of which he hasn't done yet to any of them, unfortunately. They've been able to produce good season records. They've been able to go to the playoffs. However, none of them have yet to be able to make that deep run into the playoffs and bring home that much coveted championship trophy.
Well, and it sounded like when he took over that the Commanders, the Redskins, the Washington team, that's his team. That's where he grew up, and that's really the team that he wanted. It almost sounded like these other things now, the Sixers being one of them, were more of an afterthought. This is the one he was after. This is the crown jewel, and this is where he might really want to spend his time. And with that, I said Redskins, and I did that on purpose. There was actually, was it just a rumor that we were hearing out of town that there was talk about trying to change that name back, or was that just scuttlebutt out there?
So it's kind of twofold. Number one, there was a lot of scuttlebutt and a large push to get the Redskins name and moniker back, basically rebrand the Commanders back to the Washington Redskins. However, about 2 weeks ago, a lot of the managing partners, as well as Josh Harris themselves, through team president Jason Wright, and then subsequently through Josh Harris himself, came out and said, hey, look, we're going to rebrand the team. We're going to rebrand the name. We're going to wipe the slate clear from the Dan Snyder era and the debacle of the rebrand into the Washington Commanders. However, the new brand going forward will not be the Washington Redskins. So it was something that kind of on a multifaceted front between not being able to trademark that name and logo anymore, which in the business world of the NFL is probably the biggest thing that you can do for your franchise. B, the amount of time and finances to go through the litigation of all the lawsuits and counter lawsuits and things of that nature regarding that name and moniker just weren't going to be worth it for the team to go that. So the name, the Washington Redskins, made a big push. They had 150,000 signatures on a petition to bring it back, but the new ownership group squashed it pretty quick, said, hey, we're not going to go that route. However, be prepared that, in my logical guess is probably around the beginning of the 2025 season, you're going to see a new rebrand for the DC football team.
Hey, one note. I love the word scuttlebutt that both of you guys use. That's just a great word. Scuttlebutt.
We can't spell it, but we can say it
separately. I talk to Eagles legendary radio voice Merrill Reese every September to preview the bird season. And he's told me on a couple occasions his absolute favorite road stadium to go to is Lambeau Field. No surprise there. While his least favorite, for various reasons, is FedEx Field. How's the push coming along for that new stadium down there?
So it's actually something that is gaining ground. And as much as I don't care to talk about it on every single weekly show that I do, something comes up in the news every week pertaining to the new stadium saga, as I call it in one of my segments, every week for me to address. And you have seen a complete 180 between all three local jurisdictions in Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia, and their attitude towards ownership of the football team and getting a stadium deal done. So we can go back as little as 6 months to a year ago. None of the three jurisdictions wanted to engage, interact, or even entertain Dan Snyder and his idea of trying to get a new stadium. And ever since the team was officially sold in July, we have now seen all two governors and a mayor of DC come out in support of the team and trying to leverage their way into getting the team to call their jurisdiction home. And one of the biggest things, regardless of where you want the team to be, in Maryland, Virginia, or DC, but DC made a big push this week in that the U.S. Representatives House of Oversight Committee passed a bill, bipartisan support, which is kind of surprising in and of itself, to basically rezone and extend the lease of the former RFK complex. And for DC, that is huge, because originally the RFK complex, as you gentlemen probably remember from the heydays of the 70s and 80s, and even until it closed in 94, that it was only zoned to be allowed to be used as a sports stadium. And now they were able to extend the lease to 99 years out, as well as allow all of the mixed development, that comes with a new stadium, restaurants, hotels, residential, yada, yada, yada. So by having that bill passed in favor of DC, it now gives DC kind of the upper arm in getting support or the leverage to get Washington Commanders back into DC proper.
Hey, Steve, I have one final question for you. I'm going to throw this up there. Paul Spencer would like to know if the Eagles and the Commanders could just tie, since he's one of those other fans with the star on their helmet.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to talk about with the game real quick, Steve, is the Eagles, the Commanders, Washington has played the Eagles pretty tough, even when the Eagles have had pretty good teams. Terry McLaurin is a problem for us. It has been a problem for Darius Slay and the Eagles. So for a bright spot to me from the Washington side is what's going to happen with the wide receivers, because they have a couple good ones down there in Washington. And how are they going to match up with McLaurin, and if they put Slay on him, and how successful he'll be. First time last year, he just destroyed the Eagles. The second time, the Eagles did a little better job, but I still want to say he had 101 yards or something like that.
Yeah, it's definitely something interesting for both of our offenses, right? I feel that Washington has a really good trio of wide receivers: Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel, who, by the way, it's miraculously been able to stay healthy so far this year. Cross your fingers, knock on wood. And we can equally say that about your Philadelphia Eagles and the amazing offensive weapons that you guys have as well. But you're absolutely right that we do very well going into Lincoln Financial against the Philadelphia Eagles. So early on at the beginning of the season last year, we lost to the Eagles at FedEx Field somewhere around like week 4, week 5. However, when we traveled up 95 and took you guys on in Philadelphia, we took the undubious distinction of ending your perfect season that you guys had going on at 11-0, 12-0, and we went in and put a really good performance against you, which is what I'm kind of hoping we do again this year. Unfortunately, I'm not quite seeing the same team that played at Lincoln Financial last year versus what we have currently in week number 4 in the 2023 campaign.
Yeah, that was Jalen Hurts' only loss as a starter over his last 20 or 21 regular season starts. So let's hope it doesn't happen again from my standpoint.
Hey, Steve, before we let you go, let everyone know where they can follow your Commanders Gridiron show and the things you have going on social media and so forth.
Awesome. So I'm actually the host of Commanders Gridiron, which is every Tuesday night at 6:30 on Out of the Box Sports Entertainment, which you can find on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. My Twitter handle is below there at Steve_O Laughman. And I'm also joining a bunch of co-hosts as well on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock in our NFC East War Room, where a representative of each of the 4 NFC East teams that do programs as well get together and preview our games and trash talk for about a half hour to 45 minutes. So we'll be doing that tomorrow night as well. And as always, I just want to thank you, gentlemen, for having me on, and much appreciated. And hopefully Washington can squeak out a victory this weekend.
Paul doesn't think so. He sent you a note.
I said 6.5 sacks. So, yeah, it's going to be close, I think, to that.
Well, Paul or Steve, we appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we'll stay in touch. Let's do it again as we get down the road.
Awesome. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Have a good evening.
All right. All right, Chad. We've reached fall. Gas prices have stayed up. It's time for you to save some money with Allstate's pay-as-you-go auto insurance.
Yeah, you got that right, Bill. Allstate's pay-as-you-go auto insurance puts you in control. You only pay for the miles you drive with the same full coverage that a traditional policy offers. Pay-per-mile insurance gives customers greater control of their insurance costs. See how much you can save with pay-per-mile car insurance by calling your local agent. In Westchester, Pennsylvania, that is Dave Lavoie. And by the way, in addition to auto insurance, Dave's Allstate office also offers home and renter's insurance, life insurance, business insurance, and more. Allstate in Westchester. Call Dave Lavoie at 610-430-0700. Again, 610-430-0700.
Hey, Chet, I heard a rumor because my partner doesn't talk to me too awful much, but I heard a rumor that Chris Gaskell was going to be joining us to talk about what's going on at the Irish Rover Station House. Is that true?
You heard that, huh? Yeah. Matter of fact, I did talk with Chris because there are a lot of things happening there. So I went right to the source, and this is what she told me. If you're a viewer or listener of Philly Press Box Radio, you know that the Irish Rover Station House is our longest running sponsor, and they've got another couple of great events on the calendar over the next several weeks. We will get the details right now from the Irish Rover's Christina Gaskill. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chad. How are you?
I'm doing just fine and dandy. Chris, you guys have a lot of terrific annual events, from the, of course, St. Patrick's Day Bash every March to the Father's Day Car Show, the Ugly Sweater Holiday Party that I love so much in December. But another one of the best is coming up this Saturday. Tell everyone what I'm talking about and what they can expect.
It's Oktoberfest. We are so excited. Every year we turn our patio into a beer garden. We tap all of our favorite Irish and German beers out on the patio. We've got all the traditional food, the bratwurst and knockwurst. And the highlight of the day is our Steinhoisting competition.
For people who don't know, what exactly is a Steinhoisting competition?
So it's these giant liter mugs, right? Humongous. We fill with water, and then you have to keep your arm out straight, and whoever can do it the longest is our winner. We usually average around 3 minutes, if you can believe it. And they're quite heavy, empty. So with water, it's real heavy.
Absolutely. Hey, we are also about a month away from Halloween. What does the Rover have in store for that spooky holiday?
Yeah, well, we've got a great party planned for Saturday, October 28th. We'll have some really great cocktails. We're going to have the great appetizer menu, music, and of course, costumes are a must. Look for that on Facebook and our website this afternoon.
Hey, the Phillies will be back in the postseason this year, another Red October. I'm guessing all the games will be on the many TVs at the Rover?
Yeah, absolutely. It's starting to look like Christmas here with all the red for Phillies and all the Kelly green for the Eagles. It's pretty exciting.
Always plenty of things happening at the Irish Rover Station House in Langhorne. Tell me again, what is the time for Saturday's Oktoberfest?
This Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m.
Chris Gaskill from the Irish Rover. I will see you this weekend.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. We'll share a beer.
Ha.
It's me, Jackie Dayman from 93.3 WMMR, Philly Press Box Radio. Chet, Bill, I love you. All the best. Bye.
Chet, I tell you what, I had to laugh because about while we were in Italy, we were just in Italy, and I ordered a large beer, right? So, of course, they're in metric, so here they come with that mug, and I can vouch that it is heavy when it's full of beer. I don't know about that water thing. I didn't do any water, but they are heavy. They are big, and they are good.
This may surprise you. I've never actually competed in a Steinhoisting competition, so I may have to change that one of these years.
All right, get to it. All right. Hey, you had a chance to visit with sports editor of Philly Voice, Evan Macy. You talked Philly sports. You talked some Phillies. You talked some Sixers. What's Evan got to say about the state of what's going on?
Well, as you'll remember, we had Evan on with us in late September 1 year ago, so it seemed like the perfect time, maybe even a bit overdue, to have him back on with us. Evan is one of the big shots at Philly Voice covering the Philly sports scene, and I did talk with him just a couple of hours ago, as a matter of fact. Here's our chat. Let's talk Philly sports with a guy who is well qualified to do that. It's Philly Voice sports editor, Evan Macy, the pride of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Evan, welcome back.
Hey, Chet. How's it going?
All right. So, Evan, we're going to talk Phillies first. The Phils got it done Tuesday night, clinching not only a postseason berth, but the top wild card seed, which, of course, is good news because they're going to host the opening round wild card series next week. Is it important that they got this done with 5 games left in the regular season?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I don't know if it's going to magically make their pitching better than it was last pro season, particularly in the World Series. But I do know that they absolutely hit a wall with fatigue as far as Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler went. So particularly for those two guys, they're each going to get one more start. And I expect that they're going to pitch 2 innings instead of a bullpen session and just get them out. And it'll be really nice for them to be able to do that. Today, basically everybody's going to have the day off. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of boring lineups reminiscent of the 2016 team for the rest of the week. And it's really nice they can get their ducks in a row, get some people some rest, get their pitching lined up. It's a luxury they didn't have last year, and they'll have it this year. And obviously every advantage is going to help.
We've known for a while that it would be Wheeler and Nola as the number 1 and 2 starters in the postseason. On WIP this morning, I believe Rob Thompson indicated Ranger Suarez and Taijuan Walker would almost certainly be 3 and 4, when needed. Any surprise there?
No, I think that is the right call. Suarez, I honestly think, was their 3rd best starter during the regular season. We saw flashes of really good pitching from Walker. We also saw flashes, from Sanchez. They picked up a big acquisition who pitched a freaking no-hitter. A lot of inconsistent pitching from the other 3 guys. I think that those 4 are the ones that you're going to see. Suarez was actually a really big piece of the postseason last year when they were thin on lefty relievers. I know in the World Series, he came out a couple of times and pitched in relief. They're not going to have to do that this year, which is nice. And instead, they're going to be able to have Craig Kimbrell and a healthy Alvarez and a healthy Dominguez. So pitching wise, it might not be the most talented bunch that's in the postseason, but they're healthy and they're experienced. And if they execute, they're good enough.
The bullpen was generally pretty good this season, but some of the guys did seem to be maybe leaking some oil down the stretch. How concerned are you about what we might get from, especially Kimbrell and Sir Anthony in the postseason?
Yeah, it's a completely different game when you get into the postseason. And I mean, you and I both know from watching a lot of baseball that it's just sometimes just praying and willing these professional guys who do it every day to get these outs is just nauseating. And it's really, really difficult. The home field advantage is going to really help. They'll have possibly 3 games at home to start. And then also, as the 4 seed, I guess if there's any kind of upset, they might be able to have some home field advantage later in the playoffs. So that 4 seed is going to help. As far as what to expect from the staff, I think that you're going to probably see a bullpen that has a short leash. Last year, Thompson really he was quick to pull the trigger. You can say he did not want to leave things up to fate. He likes to kind of manage in those key spots with pitching. So he's going to have a lot of different choices to make, and that's how he likes it. So, if somebody struggles, they're going to have a short leash, and then maybe they'll get another opportunity in another game.
Of course, there's a real wild card, no pun intended, in 22-year-old rookie Orion Kerkering, who looked like a seasoned veteran in tossing a 1-2-3 8th inning in his MLB debut Sunday night. Might we see this kid in the postseason in some key spots?
That's a really good point when you ask me about locking this up early. They're able to give this kid an extended look now. So he's going to have, I guess, a 5-game audition here. Expect to see him pitch as much as they're able to get him in there. And I can't see why they wouldn't. From time to time, we've seen young pitchers burst onto the scene and pitch really well in the postseason, mostly because maybe they're so inexperienced they don't even know what to expect, or maybe because there's them yet. But it's nice to have some of those guys on your roster sometimes.
Hey, speaking of young and cocky, we've heard a lot this year about those daycare kids, Stott, Bohm, etc. And then maybe it was fitting that in the clincher, we got a walk-off win when Johan Rojas singled home Christian Pache. 2 more kids. There's a lot of talented young guys on this team, which is something new for Phillies fans.
New is exactly right. suffering through the Adam Hazley and the Mickey Moniak and all of these like first round picks that didn't pan out. The Phillies have actually been on a really good hot streak drafting. And it's, been a really nice compliment to them spending hundreds of millions of dollars to bring in the Schwarbers and the Castellanoses and the Turners. They're also able to fill out the roster with these young guys who are less experienced but cheaper, which helps. And also, they're versatile. Bohm can play a couple different places. Stott can play different places. Rojas can play all over the outfield. So the versatility is really nice when you have, these older guys, like Kyle Schwarber, who's a liability in the field. So it's going to be nice this postseason to give Rob Thompson all these different levers he can push to be able to be creative and field put players in the field that can play the position like they weren't last postseason.
How about the season that Nick Castellanos had in the second half of Trey Turner?
Yeah, well, Turner, we'll start with Turner. If you look at Turner's numbers, you probably would have no idea that he was batting. I don't even remember. What was it, in the 220s at one point?
I think 234 was the low, something like that.
234. You would have no idea. He looked like his old self. That's one of the nice things about Major League Baseball, for all of the complaints about how long the games are and how long the season is. 162 games really brings out the true version of every player. So he reverted back to the mean. And then you had a guy like Castellanos who had an all-star first half, and then he kind of slumped a little bit, started striking out a little bit more, but he finished really strong. He really might have the quietest 100 RBI season that I can remember in memory. He didn't have a lot of big RBIs that jump into mind, like game-winning hits, but he, was a professional ball player. He kept his head down, and he's definitely been a good return on investment for that $100 million.
I do hope Bohm gets to play a few of these final games so he gets 20 homers and 100 RBI. That'd be kind of cool. Hey, the Braves and Dodgers were obviously the two best teams in the National League this season. Atlanta went pretty much wire to wire atop the NL East. How do the Phillies match up with those two front runners should they meet in the postseason?
It's interesting because I remember this time next year doing a deep dive into what the Phillies' path to. I wasn't even thinking World Series. They had to beat the Cardinals. They had to beat the Braves. They had to beat the Padres. I don't think they were favored in any of these NL series. The thing about baseball that's really interesting is because of the way that the season pans out and what I just mentioned, the large sample size, et cetera, you really generally do get the best teams in the playoffs. And you also get the hottest team winning the World Series. You can remember all of the NL East guys, all the NL East teams that won previously, like the Nationals, who made that wild card crazy run to win the World Series. And the Braves, when they did it, I think they were also a wild card team a couple of years ago. The wild card winners seem to have some kind of an inside track. It's very strange with Major League Baseball as opposed to the other sports. The seeding doesn't really matter, and it's all about getting hot at the right time. And I actually talked to John Middleton, the Phillies owner, yesterday, and he said like 5 times talking to media members about like, it doesn't matter who the better team is. It matters which team is hitting at the right time and pitching at the right time. And the Phillies have been doing it the last couple of weeks and months. And if they continue, that's their path. It's not being better on paper, although they do have the most expensive roster in the postseason field. But it's all about just being hot. And the Phillies know how to get hot. I mean, you've seen all the comeback wins this year. It's just kind of their thing.
And whoever they play in the first round is going to have played meaningful games right up until Saturday or Sunday. So, they could face a hot team just like the Phillies were last year in the same position. Hey, let's switch gears, talk a little Sixers in our last couple of minutes. The big question mark, training camp opening next Tuesday. Will James Harden be there?
It's right before you had me on, actually, I was dealing with a little bit of a fire because Damian Lillard was traded to the Bucks, who played the Sixers on opening day. So that's going to be an absolute circus. If Harden doesn't play, the Sixers are in pretty bad shape. He's really the key that makes this offense go from being above average to borderline elite. The numbers last year with Harden in the lineup were a lot better than the numbers the previous 2 seasons for the Sixers offense. You're going to have a Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, I guess, pick and roll team that really hasn't done much. They're going to probably be focusing on that a lot during the preseason and during training camp. But, they brought in a lot of kind of borderline fringe starters who they hope are going to be their tertiary scorers. And I really don't know where the offense is going to come from. I guess you have Tobias Harris still, but it's very thin as far as the star power goes. And Maxey better learn how to distribute the ball. He's a small guy, smaller than James Harden, and that's one of the reasons why the passing lanes aren't as open to him as some of these other guys, and he's got to be creative in the way that he can distribute the ball. He's going to really be the key, in my opinion, if the James Harden-less Sixers are able to make any kind of contending move. It's going to have to be with Maxey becoming an all-star. If Harden does come back, I don't know what his reception is going to be. I don't know if his teammates are going to want him there. I have no idea. All I know is that the Sixers beat continues to be the most interesting beat. Maybe not the most fun beat, but the most interesting beat in the city for sure.
Last thing on that front, they did sign Kelly Oubre the other day to a 1-year contract, 20 points a game last year with the Hornets. As I said, just a 1-year deal. A guy looking for a new contract. Good signing. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that if you look at the bench pieces that they have, nobody really stands out in particular. George Niang left. They brought in Danny Green, who I guess he can still play. I think he only played part of the season last year after recovering from a torn ACL. They don't have a lot of shooting off the bench. They don't have a lot of size off the bench. So Oubre is definitely going to be able to come in and contribute. And I think there's a chance he's going to start on a lot of occasions. I guess if there's no Harden, they'd find a way to make him the 5th starter. There's a lot of question marks. There's always a lot of question marks, but particularly this season, I feel like there's a lot of things I don't have definitive answers on yet with the Sixers.
Well, with them starting up and the Phillies doing another Red October, the Eagles undefeated, it's a great time on the Philly sports scene. Evan, hey, follow this guy on what used to be Twitter at Evan_Macy. Evan, great talk with you again.
Thanks, Chet. Appreciate it.
Hey, Chet, one thing I want to add to your conversation, great conversation, by the way, is on Nick Castellanos.
Yeah.
He has 0 errors. He's going to win a Gold Glove this year.
He has played very, very well in the outfield.
0.
He was a liability last year, and then as the season went on, he got better, made those memorable plays in the postseason, the sliding catches, and he's been really solid in the outfield.
Tremendous credit to him for the work that he put in to get there. I mean, like you say, he was a liability. I'm not even sure he came here to be an outfielder.
He was going to be a DH much of the time.
Right. And then when they got Schwarber, then that became an issue. Then when Harper got hurt, that became an issue. And he goes out there and he plays every day, worked his tail end off. He's going to hopefully finish this season with 0 errors and win a Gold Glove. And, that's kind of a hidden thing you don't really talk about much with these guys, how good they are defensively. But shout out to Nick Castellanos for that for sure.
Absolutely. Hey, I asked Evan about it. What are your thoughts about this rookie pitcher, the 22-year-old? Do you think they will actually give him some, key spots to pitch in?
Actually, I was going to say later on exactly what Evan said. I think we're going to see him in the next 6 games. I think we're going to probably see him 3 more times. And, they're going to give him some work and see what he can do. And, man, that first night he was electric. That slider he was throwing was ridiculous. And, then all of a sudden he whips up a 99 and follows it with a 100. But, that's one outing. Let's see how it goes. But right. I think if he pitches well here, he's absolutely going to have a roster spot.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And, they better not take this opening wild card thing for granted, because, look at what the Phillies did last year as a bottom rung wild card team. So, these other teams the 4 of them are fighting for the final 2 wild card spots. So they're going to have some momentum, whoever does get in there, and, some will to keep it going, just like the Phillies did last year. So don't say this is a lead pipe cinch, 2-0 Phillies wild card win. Anything could happen in the postseason.
Absolutely. And you can't sit here and say, well, we can't wait to get to the Braves or we can't wait to get to the Dodgers. You better win today, win your games first and work your way up. And I'm sure they know that. The players know that. I'm not sure the fans know it. They think it might be a little bit easier than it should be, just like with the Eagles playing the Commanders. On paper, that's a cakewalk too. But you know what? They play the games on the field.
And the Commanders always do play the Eagles tough. So, yeah, again, don't take that for granted.
Well, we'll come back and we'll talk a little more Phillies and Eagles. I think we have some time to do that. But, hey, first let's give a shout-out to all the shows at the Edge of Philly Sports Network this week. The gang has all the bases covered, as you can see. We are loaded up every night. Lots of Eagles stuff. Of course, with Phillies, we'll be covering all that as well. You can catch all the action on www.eopsports.com as well as Edge of Philly Sports on YouTube. You can also find our show Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, and it's also on our Philly Press Box Radio YouTube channel. So check it out. Hit those subscribe, follow, and like buttons. And as always, share with your friends and family and enjoy the shows because there's plenty of them.
Yeah, please do subscribe. Tell your friends about us. But, if along the way you screw up and you need an attorney, well, we can help you there too.
All right, guys, let's talk about Cherry Law Firm. If you get hurt at work in a motor vehicle accident, personal injury, or affected by criminal law, you got to call David R. Cherry of the Cherry Firm. Call 610-565-0300 or go to cherryinjurylaw.com. Let David R. Cherry fight for your rights. Again, that number is 610-565-0300. That's 610-565-0300 or go to cherryinjurylaw.com. Let David R. Cherry fight for your right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, Chet, while we have a minute, I want to come back and talk Eagles for just a minute about this Tampa Bay game. I think the score did not indicate how bad this game was. I think the Eagles could have won it by an awful lot more. They dominated the game from beginning to end on both sides of the ball. And I was frustrated, as I know many fans were watching it, with, run the ball, do this, do that. And then the more I thought about it through the week, I think it was more of a let's get some things ironed out approach from Nick Sirianni and the offense especially.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people wanted them to keep handing the ball off to DeAndre Swift, and why not? He was having a great game. He showed that he is, pretty good. He could handle a heavy workload. We saw that in week 2, but I think, like you said, they knew they had this game in hand, and so they wanted to get Gainwell some more work. They wanted to make Jalen Hurts throw the ball a little bit because Tampa Bay was not going to win that game, especially with these guys and what they were able to do. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, man, the future of this D-line with these young guys under the tutelage of Fletcher Cox, teams are going to have a real tough time running the ball on this team. Certainly the Eagles are number 1 against the run. And I think that's going to be the case all year long. Carter's already being talked about as being a perennial superstar 3 games into his career.
Yeah. Well, and, I think the other thing that was interesting is Swift played the first and third quarter. Yeah. Gainwell played the second and fourth quarter. It was almost like a little league game,
Yeah.
It didn't matter how hot Swift was. Gainwell had to get work, which is, that's great because it's a marathon. We sit here and watch a game and we think every game's a sprint. Yeah. It's not. It's a marathon. And Penny's going to get his work. You could see that he was a little frustrated on the sidelines that he wasn't in the game, but he's going to get his work. What if anything, came up about Landon Dickerson and whatever he got nicked up on? Is he okay to go?
I heard no updates on him. I'm sure there was something as far as an update, but I heard nothing. So I don't know. I guess we'll find out tomorrow, Thursdays, when they usually put out the report on that stuff.
Yeah. So I'll ask you one more question for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts did look a little rusty, or a little communication issues going on with the receivers. You make anything of it?
Mild concern, not in panic mode, certainly.
Oh, no.
No, it's a long season, as you said. He's still getting used to Brian Johnson as coordinator. I think they have a few, different plays that they've been running. And so it's going to take a few more games. And again, we go back to the no preseason stuff. You hate to see that, the fact that the first 3 or 4 games are kind of like a preseason, but that's just the way it is in this day and age. So give him another week or two. And I think he's going to get better and better each week.
Yeah, I do too. And the communication issues with the receivers, there were certainly some of that. That surprised me a little bit at this stage, even though we can call it a preseason, they still practice. So that can, I don't know, concerns me. It surprised me, I guess. The other thing that surprises me just a little bit, and we'll watch this play out as the season goes on, is Lane Johnson.
Yeah.
Lane Johnson just doesn't seem quite as sharp yet to me as, and I don't care about the offsides, not offsides, whatever. I don't care about that. But he just doesn't seem right on top of his game to me right yet.
Yeah, I agree. And you watch the O-line guys more closely than I do, but yeah, I'm with you on that. He's another year older. He played more games than usual last year because of the run to the Super Bowl. He played much of the latter part of the season with an injury, so that takes a toll. We saw in the Kelsey documentary how he's like hobbling around just in the off season, even because it just takes such a toll on your body. So, they're into their 30s now, and it gets tougher and tougher every year. And I still have faith in Lane Johnson. I still think he's going to be there.
Oh, yeah.
When it counts, but it's not easy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking about a guy that's an all-pro and maybe even a Hall of Famer. And any tick down, you kind of notice, and that doesn't mean he's not going to play well.
Hey, before we get to our picks, how cool was the Penn State whiteout on Saturday night? That looked so cool. And then they played the game.
You gotta go. You gotta go.
Those guys.
Yeah. And Penn State dominated that game as well. And man, I tell you what, I same thing. I don't know if Penn State's that good. I was that bad, combination of both, but the Penn State defense gets after people, and we'll see. It's going to be a showdown when we get to Michigan comes to State College, and they've made that game a noon game. It'll still be it's a noon game. TV, something crazy, big noon on Fox or whatever the heck they call it now. So it'll still be I think that's the stripe out game. Still going to have something, but not being at night is a big deal for the opponents. And then, of course, they have to go to Ohio State. So it can't slip up anywhere along the line. But this is a good football team with a quarterback that's really good and only going to get better.
Yep. Keep it going, guys.
All right. Hey, let's get to our predictions. If we get time, we'll circle back and we'll talk a little Phillies. But it's prediction time. So before we get to this week's picks, Chet, how are you, Bob Patrone Jr., boop to his friends, doing through week 3 and on our picks and on our survivor pool picks?
Well, I'm going to update you on the margin of victory pool, as we're calling it, after we do our regular picks. Boop may not want to watch or listen to that part of things because Boop is not doing – it was his idea for the whole thing, and he's not doing too well with the margin of victory thing. Anyway, with our regular picks, Boop and I were both 3-1 last week, while you, Bill, as you noted, you picked Washington. So you were 2-2. None of us saw that. Cowboys lost to the Cardinals coming, but I think we're all kind of happy about it. And let's see, 3 weeks into the season, I am now 9-3. Boop is 8-4, and you, my friend, are 7-5.
Yeah, took those stinking, lousy NFC East teams. The NFC East apparently stinks, and it might still be the best division in football. But the Giants and the Commanders certainly laid a couple eggs. Giants not very good.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So we've added a game this week because of the interdivision matchup. So we've got Thursday night football, Detroit at Green Bay. The Lions are -1.5. Monday night football, Seattle's at the Giants. Giants -1.5. That surprised me. New England versus Dallas. Dallas -7. And then the Eagles host the Commanders with the Eagles -7.5. So who you got?
All right, let's give you Boop's first, and I didn't read what Boop had to say, but Detroit at Green Bay, he says, Detroit is looking for its 4th straight win against Green Bay, which would be or tie their longest streak against the Packers since winning 11 in a row back in 1949 through 54. He does think the Lions will win this one, and so do I. We're both taking Detroit.
And so do I. I'm actually surprised that spread is a little closer than I thought, except that it is at Green Bay and it's a night game.
Yeah.
Monday night football, Seattle at the Giants. Giants, I don't know how they're favored against anybody, but here we are.
You know, I love to fact check and you, and I did not do it. So I'm going to trust you that it is Giants by 1.5. I don't know. I don't get that. I never would have guessed that. I think that's wrong. Boop says Seattle hasn't lost in East Rutherford since 2008. They're 4-0 since then. He says make it 5-0. He's taking the Seahawks. I'm taking the Seahawks. I don't care what the spread is.
Well, I am taking the Seahawks too, but let me just check and see. As of right now, is a pick. It's a pick 'em. So yeah, it was right when I wrote it, but
I believe it.
Yeah, I'm going to go Seahawks too, just because I think the Giants are not good.
Yeah.
All right, that gets us to New England, Dallas -7. What in the world happened to the Cowboys last week?
I don't know, but I liked it.
I don't know what happened, but it was good.
I was out at a tavern for much of it, seeing the fabulous Road Dogs and our friends Robbie and Bob. So that was fun. And watching Dallas lose on the screens there, that was also kind of fun. But anyway, Boop says New England hasn't lost in Dallas this century, 0-2 since 1996, and they were 0-4 their last century. Anyway, Boop is taking the Cowboys. I'm taking the Cowboys.
Yeah, I am too. I think they'll bounce back. I don't know how they lost the Cardinals.
I don't think New England's that good either anymore. So.
Yeah, they're not. They're not. All right, Eagles host the Commanders. Eagles -7.5. And I'm not going to gain any ground this week, I don't think.
No. And as Steve noted, the line is now up to 8.5, and I'm taking the Eagles to cover. I think they're going to win this one easily, more easily than most Eagles-Washington games. Boop says, play lousy, win easily. Seems to be the Birds' mantra this season. Works here. Eagles. He's taking the Eagles. I'm taking the Birds.
Yeah, I am too, but I don't know about the play lousy. I think the bar is high.
Yes,
the bar is really high.
Do they cover the 8.5, which is the line now?
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, you saw what I said. I think you saw right at kickoff of the game the other night. I said Eagles by 17.
Yep, and they won by 14. Yep.
Well, and if they didn't give up that lazy late touchdown.
Yeah, and they could have added a field goal themselves and made it 17.
Yeah. I mean, this is a good football team. This is a good team.
Yeah.
All right, so what do we got in our margin of victory pool?
As for our margin of victory pool, let's see. Here it is. I'm keeping track of all of this, Bill. I'm 3-0. You're 3-0. Boop is now 1-2 because he took the Lions in week 2 and lost. He took Dallas in week 3 and lost. So we get points for how much our picked team wins by. I took Kansas City and they crushed whoever last weekend by 31.
The Bears.
The Bears, that's right. The Niners was your pick. They won by 18 over the New York Football Giants. So you now have 63. You now have 42. I have 63. Boop is stuck at 10 because you get 0 if you're making a losing pick. So we are on to week 4. Boop and I are both taking the San Francisco 49ers this week. You already took them, so you got to take somebody else, Bill. Who is it?
Well, I'm going to think that it's going to be a breakout time because it has to be, or the seat is going to start to get hot. I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings over the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah,
they can't be 0-4. Minnesota, I don't think. I think this is the week against an opponent they should beat. I think. So I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings.
All right. I agree that Minnesota will win the game, but that's a bit of a risk, and I don't think they're going to crush them. So even if you get the win and get a couple of points, I don't think they're going to win big.
Well, I got to get the win, most importantly. So
yes, I think the Niners could rack up a pretty big win here.
Yeah. Who are they playing?
I don't remember. I forget now.
All right. I knew I already used them. So okay, we'll see how that goes. But hey, in the meantime, Chet, what does football season being all cranked up mean to Bob Cavanaugh and the gang of Cavs Philly tailgates?
Cavs Philly tailgates. They've been cooking up a great catering business for more than 30 years, known best for their tailgate parties. Cavs is a 3-time winner of Philly Tailgate's Jack Daniels Great American Tailgate Party Contest and a past winner of the Philly Daily News Tailgate Award. Cavs also does corporate events and parties, you name it, and they've got a lot of great events coming up. tailgates before all of the Eagles home games this season over by Live Casino. Order your tickets via the website, phillytailgates.com. Check the site, and if you have any questions, you can email them at cavscatering@verizon.net. Cavs Catering tailgates, Cavs Philly tailgates, the way to go. If you don't know, Cav also works with Vince at Philly Sports Trips. They're the folks to use for all Eagles road games and more. We saw a lot of pictures of the gang down in Tampa just having a good old time, and they have a lot of great trips coming up too, Philly Sports Trips. Now, a couple of them are sold out. That includes the Los Angeles trip when the Eagles are out there, and the trip up to MetLife for the Eagles-Jets game. But you can still get in on all the remaining Birds trips for later in the season, or maybe join them for the Philadelphia Union trip up to New England. Check out those trips and all of the other ones at phillysportstrips.com. And Bill, we were talking earlier, I was anyway, about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, and I don't want to spend much more time on that, but who knew that Bill Belichick, the New England Patriots coach, actually had a bit of a sense of humor, because he was asked about it on his weekly show, and here's what he had to say about Travis and Taylor.
Well, I would say that Travis Kelce's had a lot of big catches in his career. This would be the biggest.
How about that?
Yeah. Hey, you talk about we're gonna run out of time, but you talk about a media blitz.
Oh man! And
what Travis Kelce now is the number one selling jersey out there since Sunday. The last I heard, it was like 300,000 more followers or some ridiculous thing.
Yeah, jersey sales up fourfold or fivefold. And now Chiefs' upcoming games are a hot ticket on StubHub, because they're hoping Taylor Swift will show up, including at the MetLife, I guess, for the next game.
Yeah, and New Heights is now the number one podcast.
Oh, my goodness.
Because now everybody's wanting to tune in to see Travis. And, of course, Jason, in their little clips have come out, is just living it up, man. He's just feeding Travis and letting Travis run with it. And, to Travis's, he got a smile on his face.
Yep. Hey, a couple other things before we do wrap things up. Brooks Robinson, we lost yesterday, man. What a great third baseman he was. May he rest in peace. A legendary Baltimore Oriole who I remember watching when I was a young kid. And the great Mike Schmidt celebrating birthday number 74 today, Bill. How about that?
How's that happen, right?
Yeah.
All right. Hey, we had great guests tonight. Steve Laughman and Evan Macy joining us. Who's coming to Philly Press Box Radio next week?
Bill, the Phillies will be playing games, some pretty important ball games at Citizens Bank Park next Tuesday and Wednesday. We don't know the times as yet. Now, we will almost certainly have a baseball-related guest on our show next Wednesday, but we have to wait to get more clarity on the game times before we can figure all of that out. But I can tell you we will have another guest on our show next Wednesday. It's our pal Mike Conroy to tell us about a couple of cool events coming up soon. There's a Darren Dalton Foundation Celebrity Bartender event October 8th, and this year's Philly Sports Hall of Fame inductions event that is in early November at Live. So Mike's going to give us all the deets on that stuff, Bill.
Good stuff. And for everyone to know, you and I had an opportunity to vote this year on that, and that was our first time. We're proud to have that opportunity.
And Bill, the big news the other day, Usher named as the halftime entertainment for the Super Bowl. And I know you're a big fan, so just run off your top 10 Usher songs for me.
I used to be in Usher back when I was a kid. I worked at the Palestra. I was in Usher.
I got to be honest.
You want me to name my top 10 Big Five games that I can remember? I can do that.
Now, from having seen Usher on The Voice, which I used to watch regularly, I don't quite as much anymore. I like Usher, seems like a good guy, and I know a few of his songs that I double-checked. The ones that I like the most would be DJ Got Us Falling in Love and Yeah. Those are my two favorite songs. Yeah, it's called Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's all I got.
There you go.
Wrap it up, Bill.
Let's wrap it up. Let's thank tonight's special guests, Steve Laughman and Evan Macy. Our sponsors, the Irish Rover Station House, Cavs Philly Tailgates, PPCC 118 Raz Room, and Dave Lavoie of Allstate Insurance in Westchester, PA. For Jim, Chet, Chesko, this is Bill Furman. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll join Philly Press Box Radio next Wednesday, October the 4th at 7 p.m. You see us live on Facebook. Listen to our website, phillypressboxradio.com, on Google Podcasts, as well as Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and all the others. High hopes, Philadelphia sports fans. Let's go, Phillies. Let's go, Eagles.
I hope he had